about, and I think this is the main conversation for us really, the president, some say, responding to comments made by Sam Jonah on the issue of a culture of silence. He says culture of silence is not here. And he was speaking in Cape Coast as he was honored for essentially the free senior high school policy. So I'm just reading a bit of what the Daily Graphic put together. And it says that, let's see exactly what the president had to say. Recalling how far Ghana had come in promoting press freedom, he said, "We did not wake up suddenly one morning, one day to find ourselves with over 400 different radio stations and dozens of television channels instead of one radio station and one television station, both owned by the state. We went through many battles together to get to where we are today in the media sphere in the country. The criminal libel law, which had been part of the legal architecture for decades, did not just suddenly disappear from our laws. I believe it is part of my make. And that's when it comes to freedom of the press, I am certain I have nothing to apologize for with reference to anything I have ever done or said." And this is all a quote where he says, "With pride, I belong to the Dankwa Buzia Dombo political tradition, whose forebearers with great personal sacrifice fought for the democratic, open, free system of governance the country is enjoying today and which has stood the test of time." And he was explaining that those were the values and principles he stood for and would continue to uphold. Maybe, Dr. Park, you can start off with the response to those who think that we are experiencing a culture of silence.
Well, Mama V, I think the occasion itself, how it came to be, the context, and why the president chose that occasion to, if you like, rebut the statement that was made by Sam Jonah is curious. You recognize that Sir Sam Jonah is actually the chancellor of UCC. And although I didn't watch it, but from the pictures, he was present. So in many ways, you could see that the president was well prepared to exact his pound of flesh. So we cannot discuss this matter without also referencing the context and the items that Sir Sam Jonah listed, leading him to make that now famous statement that we are experiencing a culture of silence. But you see, the president ought to know that he is speaking to the entire nation, and that there are practitioners and people whose experience have led them to conclude that indeed there is a culture of silence. We can start with, one of the former journalists working for multimedia. I speak about Manasseh Azure, when he did his documentary, investigative journalism, titled, I think it was Military in the City, and the type of response that came up. Eventually, he himself admitted that he felt threatened to the extent that he had to seek refuge outside of the country. We also know of instances where, under this president and this dispensation, radio stations belonging, or at least seen to be sympathetic to his political opposition, were closed down, whereas other radio stations seen to be sympathetic to his party, also committing similar offenses, had not been closed down.
Example?
Oh, Oman FM, who doesn't know that?
That is not true.
Who doesn't know that?
That is not true. But I'll deal with it.
In any case, we also have instances where we have seen how radio personalities have been harassed by security agencies for pronouncements that they had made. We can speak about the example of Mugabe Masi, then of Muntie FM. So there are practical examples that have allowed people to believe that there is a culture of silence. And you see, once Sam Jonah made his statement, he cataloged a long list. He even made references to the fact that even in academia, where academics used to be very active in the public space, championing causes, advocating, critiquing what was going wrong in as far as society was concerned, a lot of them have suddenly gone mute. And so the president can choose to exact his pound of flesh in front of, say, Sam Jonah, but that does not still take away the perception, rightly so, that we are experiencing a culture of silence.
You said you have a response.
Well,
is it not those who are experiencing it? I mean, if you're going through it, then you can best testify. Isn't that what it is? Why do you want to take away what somebody thinks they are experiencing away from them?
The culture of silence phenomenon is something that we all know what it entails. So it is not for one to get up today to bring a new conception or definition and impose it on us and say that, okay, that's what I feel and I want to call it culture of silence, and then we should accept it as culture of silence.
Okay, so what's your definition?
So I'll come to that. And I'm rather surprised, because I would have thought that Dr. Apak, who clearly from even his gray looks like, and even from the biological reproduction he is just recounted, is older than me, should know the history of this country as far as culture of silence is concerned, to now be speaking to the issues, these two issues that he speaks of as his example of culture of silence, makes the claim a laughable one, and I'll deal with it. But you see, I am rather surprised that people claim that Mr. President was responding to Mr. Sam Jonah and Mr. Sam Jonah was there. Mr. Sam Jonah is not the first person to have made the erroneous claim of culture of silence in this country. In fact, he merely is repeating something that, for instance, the leader of the NDC, former President John Dramani Mahama, said on the 12th of August 2020 and repeated on the 3rd of May 2021, something that the NDC as a political party has by several press engagements made claims of, that there is a culture of silence. So the claim is not original to Mr. Sam Jonah. And so the response is not to Mr. Sam Jonah as a person and alone. It is to all the persons who have been making that erroneous claim over some time.
Okay.
And I thought that it was wise for the president to have dealt with the misconception and to have cleared the air on something that we all know was just being pushed into the system for whatever.
So help us with your definition so that we can appreciate. Because did you see how people came after Sam Jonah?
But that definitely cannot be.
Do you recall the examples that he gave?
The reason. Well, I'll choose Mr. Sam Jonah and how people came after him. That is not the culture of silence. In fact, that is democracy. If Mr. Sam Jonah can speak in such vociferous terms and in such clear and strong terms, why does he think that somebody else should not be allowed to express their own feelings in the same manner? And the thinking of some is that, well, we are of a certain privilege, and when we speak, our word should be law. And that because maybe we are in the media, or because we are some big man or some former CEO, or we are a knighted person, so when we speak, nobody else can speak.
The difference, Pius, is that you are a government. You are supposed to listen. And you're supposed to get the sentiments of the people. So it's not like, you are on this side and we are on the other side. Exactly. It's not like we're coming at you and you're coming at us.
That's exactly the point. That's what I'm saying. That when you say that we are a government, when the people of Ghana speaks, they do not speak as part of the government or against the government. When Mr. Sam Jonah is speaking, he's not speaking as against the government. He's speaking as a Ghanaian who has an opinion.
So your job is to just come and defend?
It's not a question of defending. It's a question of expressing what my opinion is. If that coincides with Mr. Sam Jonah, he is fine. Though there's no culture of silence. Okay, but when I disagree with him, oh yes, then that's culture of silence.
So let's hear your definition.
That is a warped understanding of culture of silence.
Let's hear your definition then.
You see, we have lived through it. The people, and we have read all the material there is, and we know Mr. Clement Apak is here. Mr. Sam Jonah himself has lived through the culture of silence. The culture of silence days in this country that we know about are the days where you see the state persecuting and prosecuting people who are in the business of expressing their opinion. These are the days of the criminal libel that was repealed by the very same person today who we are accusing of superintending an era of culture of silence. It is the days where you get what the president describes as the midnight knock.
Dr. Park, if we hang on to this definition, won't we be making such a big mistake because the society has moved?
We will.
This is 21st century. When we say the culture of silence is creeping back into the society.
We cannot also encourage a privilege or a class society.
That is far from the case. That is far from the case.
Let's just hear him on this.
I think it will be fairer because it is a theory that you know by his submission he does not ascribe to. So if you ask him that question, you are only...
No,
it's a conversation, it's a discussion. It's a discussion.
So let me make my point.
Like you said, it's a democracy.
That is it. We can agree to disagree.
So now the idea should be that if you are an accomplished person, if you are a media person, if you speak, nobody should speak. Then there's no culture of silence. Is that what we are saying?
Look,
how can that be the option? Because we're in the 21st century.
I find the definition to be out of context. We have evolved as a society over time. And so to say, as the president said, that the knock on the door, that is not the only way that people are being silenced or people are being intimidated or threatened for their views. And I will just add two other examples. You remember this journalist who worked for EIB in Bolgatanga when he did the expose about the then former minister who had been brought to the presidency and his involvement with some illegal mining. We know he was not only threatened, but his home was vandalized and he was threatened. He had to sneak out because he had a tip that they were coming after him. He had to come to Accra for survival. The editor of the WhatsApp newspaper, on 2 occasions, he was arrested, handcuffed.
So that's called
and he was, of course, because he had expressed his opinion. He had written a piece. Yes, it is a culture of silence.
You are misleading.
The point is that
you are misleading.
The point of that action is to make sure that you don't speak, that you don't express your opinion.
You are misleading. In the specific case of the editor of the WhatsApp newspaper,
when people suffer for expressing their opinions,
allegation of bribery was made to the police.
It was never proven up to today.
But I'm saying that an allegation was made. The police have a duty to take action. How do you interpret that to mean a culture of silence?
So when an allegation, so are you saying that when an allegation is made, the first step is to go and arrest the person,
you handcuff him at night, and you drive him all the way to another region?
We can do this properly. I'm saying that's the introduction of the class society and the privileged lot.
I don't see class from the examples that he's given.
If Dr. Clement Apak made a complaint against an ordinary Busa citizen who threatened his life, he would expect the police to act. But if an ordinary Ghanaian citizen makes an allegation of crime against another person, Mr. Apak is indicating here that because he's the editor of a newspaper, he's insulated from police action.
But I'm sorry, Pius. I'm sorry, Pius. I'm sorry if the
action, then that is culture of silence.
Pius,
how can that be?
If the standard operating procedure for the police is to go and arrest when a complaint is made, then I'm sorry. I don't think that is proper.
I've said
because
that.
you must investigate before.
I have said that.
It really doesn't matter who is making the reports.
Mama V, that's a conversation you can have with the police about their operating procedure. I'm reporting to you about police action. I've told
especially
you.
when it's coming on the back of a news item the person has done.
How do you know?
But we're using timing. But we're using timing.
But there was an allegation that the editor attempted to extort money.
It is false. It never happened.
But you see,
he never tried to extort money from anybody.
You are being judgmental.
The investigation has since not proceeded.
You have taken over the job of the police.
So why has the investigation not proceeded? Why is he not being prosecuted?
And then number two, he takes the example of my good friend who does a documentary, and the state, disagreeing with the documentary, takes the proper step of applying to the National Media Commission to have the matter looked into. Mr. Clement Park is saying that amounts to culture of silence.
Why did he feel threatened?
But I'm saying that threatened by whom?
I mean, the man is on record to have indicated that his life was in danger.
But you are making the claim. You are making the claim here that we are now living in a culture of silence. If it is just about the claim of threats, then it is as old as when I've met journalists. I've met journalists who are older than, who were practicing before I was born, who used to tell me that they have received all kinds of threats. But you think that in America, journalists don't receive threats?
So what are we saying?
Journalists don't make the claim that they have received threats.
So what we are experiencing, I just want to understand, what we're experiencing today is not at the same level as what used to happen in the past. So it's not a culture of silence.
What we are experiencing today is a vibrant media that is clearly motivated enough to speak on the matters that they feel ought to be spoken about.
Okay, and the concerns of threats?
There are other members who are not in the media who feel that, no, there is too much noise and there's too much misguidance from the media that have to be corrected, and they're also doing their correction.
How?
That cannot be confused.
How are they?
You said to me that, or he said to me, have you looked at the reaction to Mr. Sam Jona's statement? Have you seen how people responded?
I said that.
So, viciously. But I'm saying that if people respond to Mr.
largely
Sam Jona,
government appointees,
including communicators from the governing party and the government as well.
They are Ghana. They are citizens of Ghana. The government of Ghana officially has not responded to Mr. Sam Jona and said you have no right to speak on this matter.
Well, the president did.
I am a member of the government. I have an opinion on the issues that Sir Sam Jona addressed, and I expressed my opinions. And I'm saying that to the extent that Mr. Sam Jona can express his opinions freely, I can also be allowed to express my opinions freely. That should not mean culture of silence. However, if there is evidence that people are threatening Mr. Sam Jona, people have gone to give Mr. Sam Jona the midnight knock, okay? People have gone to shit bomb his place of work, like we saw under the NDC, and so on and so forth. Then we can talk about a culture of silence. And we are not talking about mere allegations. We are talking about allegations that can have the evidence shown to us.
Okay.
Not somebody getting up and saying that, well, I have been threatened, I have been threatened.
Okay, it is happening. You remember the Modern Ghana, the editors of Modern Ghana. You remember what happened to them? You remember the case involving the editors of Modern Ghana? We all know what happened to them. Clearly,
we haven't said.
State agencies, elements of national security, went there and did what they did. And you think that this is not an example of culture of silence? And what was their crime?
No, Mr.
All the accusations that they were being accused of till date.
Don't do this.
We have not had any further action in terms of prosecuting them for whatever offense they were supposed to have committed, which warranted the raiding of their offices and what they had to go through. So, Pius, you see, you people can try to dismiss this as much as you want. But don't forget that power is transient. Today,
the more reason why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. The more reason why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
You think that you can get away with this.
I'm scandalized.
But that is not the way to run a democracy.
No, I'm really scandalized.
It
is not the way to run it.
I want to say something. I want to say something. And this is not taking sides, but just an example. You see the way the men from National Security stormed City FM that day and how they made their movements on Zoe. If you are a reporter and you see that happen to a colleague, do you know what it does to you? Do you know the fear that that action alone puts in you?
You cannot find, look, Mama V, it's a serious matter. I can empathize with Caleb Kuda and any journalist in that situation, or Zoe Abubaidin, but we cannot hide behind emotionalism to veil this discussion.
This is not emotions.
The point I'm making.
I just said that I wanted to bring something to your attention.
You are appealing to people's emotions.
I'm not.
But you see, I agree.
Let me storm here right now.
No problem. I mean, no problem. The point I'm making is that I have not said that there have not been excesses reported in our history, or even currently that there have not been excesses. But you speak about the City FM matter. Have you checked, on the other hand, the reaction of the state? The punitive steps that were taken. Have you checked that one? Are these not the assurances that the people should see to indicate? Let me just say
this was an angled question. This was an angled question. This is not like the era that you talk about where there was military rule. If this happened under that, then you can put it in that category. But this didn't happen then.
That even in a democracy, there are excesses. Even in the media, there are excesses. Many times you have gotten reportages wrong and you have apologized. There are excesses. And so even in your practice, there may be excesses. In the security practice, there are excesses. How those excesses are dealt with is what will differentiate the matter.
Okay.
But when Mr. Clement Park says that, do you recall this? I have said that I am against threats or attacks on journalists. And I think that people who are guilty should be punished heavily. But when, for instance, the bodyguard of Mr. John Mahama slaps the Joy FM reporter at a program, is that culture of silence? That cannot be culture of silence. That is an isolated case of a serious physical assault on a journalist, which must be dealt with and decisively.
Okay.
You see,
finally before we wrap up,
when this gentleman takes the recorder of a reporter and snatches it, can you describe that as culture of silence? I think that sometimes we reach too far, because we want to give the dog the bad name and hang it for political expediency.
Okay, just in a minute.
And it is dangerous that the political class are involved in this.
Is the president the most vilified?
Absolutely.
I don't think so.
Absolutely. In fact, historically.
Historically. Are we going to do free senior high school?
If you want to comment, you can go ahead.
He spoke about it as well. No, and actually, he attacked Joy FM for leading an free senior high school campaign.
Me? Or
the president did.
But is that how you see it?
No, he said a radio station, but we all know.
You know it's Joy FM that is leading the campaign.
Joy FM is leading a campaign to fix the challenges being faced in the implementation of the policy.
By not including the Ghana Education Service.
By giving parents,
by not including
students, headmasters, teachers, and GES. In fact, Dr. Tando. Dr. Tando was part of that conversation.
Look at
he admitted.
Look at the misleading intervention.
No, it is on record.
Dr. Tando came to the station, and even right there on the station, he protested the uninvolvement of the Ghana Education Service.
Tando
and they were invited. He said that they were invited as an afterthought. So in the design of the campaign, in the design of the negative campaign that the
we're listening to the two of you, and people can't. Otherwise, the time is running. Please land so that he can come in.
If you ask me, the president's pronouncements on a media house giving access to citizens to express their concern about what is wrong and to ask for the challenges to be fixed in itself is intimidatory. It's an example of trying to silence Joy FM. Yes, by and large, the president is admonishing, or if you like, reprimanding Joy FM for allowing citizens to express their concerns. And that is not right.
Look, you see I don't okay. I was going to say something, it may have sounded harsh. But that's what we are faced with, okay? I hold the view that the president held. I think that we all should be involved in the campaign to fix everything and anything. And there is no policy in this world under the sun that I know of.
Agreed.
That does not have any problems. But any discerning reader or listener can also decipher between a campaign to fix a project and a campaign to give a policy a bad name.
Yeah,
and so that one, you cannot take it away from me and saying that by saying that my expressing of that my opinion means that I am engaged in culture of silence. In any case, Mr. Park, you may not have met, but I have met hundreds of people who otherwise would not have been able to go to school.
That is not the argument.
No, but are you the one making my argument?
That is not the argument.
Are you the one going to make my argument?
We agree that the program is a good program.
Are you going to make my argument for me?
1.2.
You are not saying that that's not the argument.
1.2 million students.
I am trying to wrap up so that you can go to your next program.
1.2 million students in school. That's a good thing.
He says that that's not the argument.
1.2 million students in school is a good thing.
This is where we have to
should they
end
be
the
sleeping in
conversation.
squalor? Should they have overburdened teachers? Should they be eating unwholesome food?
We have given them more teachers than you ever gave.
This is where we have to.
Schools that you have ever built.
This is where we have to end the conversation, Mr. Pius Hajide. Thank you very much for your time.
Just 1 second.
Thank you, Dr. Clement Appiah.
Very well.
You know, Mr. Appiah himself is a beneficiary of free SHS. You know, Mr. John Mahama himself is a beneficiary of free SHS.
Nobody has said free SHS is bad. We have not said that. We want it to be better.
Thank you, gentlemen. Stay with us. We thank you for joining us on this segment. There's more.